Musk has become the world's first trillionaire. What does that say about society?
Yo, greediness is disgusting. Disgusting. I don't think anybody should have that much money.
Nobody
Once
should
again,
have $1
money
billion.
is not real.
What are we doing?
What are we talking about? Money ain't even real,
Well,
right?
to speak on the money isn't real. So he's amassed this fortune through a lot of different avenues, but the bulk of it has been through the government, and us, our taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
And then also, I didn't know that there's this thing. It doesn't exist anymore, but so you know how you have to get your car checked for emissions, right? It has to be, below a certain level of emissions, right? So there was a government program back in, I want to say maybe like 2012. I may be wrong. I have to go back and check the article, but basically, because Teslas are all electric cars, they don't have any emissions, right? Like they're not emitting anything into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And each car company has a certain amount of emissions credits, right? So here's another thing to like, money isn't real, right? They created this, created this credit system, right?
Program.
And your car company can only produce cars and emit a certain amount of emissions, right?
To get approved for the program.
But because Tesla, their cars emit nothing, all of the other car companies have to pay Tesla for their emission credits.
What?
And that generated billions of dollars for Tesla. So that is also part of his fortune. Like all of the other car companies had to pay Tesla
for those
credits because, if you run out, you can't make any more cars.
Wow.
So that is also part of his fortune and how his fortune was built. Other car companies having to pay Tesla so that they can make their cars. Then on top of that, the government grants. He's gotten billions of dollars in government grants. Then, our taxpayer dollars. So there's a lot that's gone into this fortune. But point blank period, this is just a dystopian ass society. Like the
Trump's
world
America.
hunger still exists even in America, and we have trillionaires running around. Like he's worth more than most countries.
Yes.
And that makes no sense.
I think somebody should rob him. Like, I think we got to go back to
your phone about to start ringing now too, man. Your phone going to ring.
I'm in line with that, but it got to be more than just.
No, I'm saying it tongue in cheek. But what I'm saying is, if you've amassed $1 trillion,
that's bananas.
You should be demanded of to return. Like that.
Yes,
that is. Like when you talk about oppression or systems or mechanisms of oppression, if you have $1 trillion, you literally have enough resources to give back to entire nations, to build resources and operational unity with entire nations. If you choose not to do that, we should rob you.
Yeah.
Like we should literally find you and demand that you should not be able to walk. Where does Elon walk the streets? Like where he be at?
I don't know. He probably
driving cars.
Where he be at? Right? Like I see he be posting on Twitter. Am I the only one that still calls it Twitter? Y'all call it Twitter?
No, I call it Twitter.
I call it Twitter too.
I've never gone X.
But how dare you even say some like that and expect like the poor and impoverished people of America to not have you on the radar? Like I swear, if he go to the Met Gala, wherever he be at, I want my brothers there because we have to. Like this goes by what I'm saying. Like who's willing to do the thing to push back against the thing that's suffocating us? This ain't something to be celebrated. Like this is war. It sounds like you tell me you got a trillion. It's war. Where's he at? Right?
Well, he got the president. He has the president in his back pocket, right? So a lot of his wealth has come from, like you were saying, grants from the federal government.
Right.
Even NASA gave him $278 million, I think, in 2006 when his company was failing.
Right.
Yes.
So when you could do business and not have to worry about failing or any financial responsibility, you can ultimately, clearly in this country, amass $1 trillion with people out here starving, homeless, globally. So in Trump's America, if you look the right way, you got the right complexion,
right,
and you can do it.
I want to play devil's advocate here because Elon did this in capitalism, right?
Yes.
In the capitalist society that we live with. If a person is able to amass a great deal of wealth because of their ideas, their talent, their skill set, their ingenuity, their innovation, should there be a cap on their ability to get and to obtain because of their skills? Because the one thing about Elon, I mean, Tesla's a vibe. Like the fact that he was able to be the first one to come out with these electric vehicles and manipulate the system, like you said, where people are paying for his carbon credits and whatnot, his emission credits. Like, you know, each one of us also have a brand. You have a brand that you put forth effort to that pays you a revenue. You have we're sitting in a brand, right? So the question is, what is the ceiling, right? So what if, for example, Red Summer TV starts taking off and starts to make millions and billions? When are we going to hold accountable? Like at what point does the conversation change from people like us who trying to get to it? And then like, yo, listen, you're going too far. We're trying to get
different
to it.
rules for different people.
They say that once you start making 25 times the amount of your expenses per year, you don't need any more money.
25
right?
times.
So once you make 25 times, like you make 80K a year,
right?
If you make $2 million,
having the good information,
yeah, for sure.
Because I be thinking about this. Like, if you make $2 million, then you have reached financial freedom. Now, obviously, your yearly expenses can increase or decrease per year.
Right.
But 25 times is like the barometer for when you don't need any more money. You've reached financial freedom.
I'm over here like my Con Ed is 138.
Yeah, I'm doing it back too.
You know,
yeah.
Where the fuck I'm going with this?
I know how much I spend a year because I use the app to track that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, 25 times. And I think everything needs to be regulated. Yes, everybody should be regulated. So if Red Summer TV starts making billions,
we gonna get Malik.
We need to regulate.
Yeah.
If I become a billionaire,
I know where Malik be at.
I would want to be.
I don't know where Elon be at, but I know where be at.
If I start making billions, I need to be regulated. Yes, because it's exploitation. Once you start making billions of dollars, you're exploiting somebody and something to get that money. And we're being exploited. The only way we can rob Elon is if we rob the government. The only way we could rob the government is if we stop paying taxes. That's like the first. That's the first step. But everybody's too scared to stop paying taxes. Well, they can't arrest all of us.
Right, and that's a big political issue in the state now. Is tax the rich, right? And I don't understand for the life of me why there is pushback on this concept. Right. But what I'll say is, there needs to be an entire systemic way in which we go about it, because the thing about rich people is that they understand tax code, right? And so it's not enough, right? So because Cuomo taxed the rich as to shorten the gap after the COVID pandemic, Cuomo raised taxes like 1% on like top earners, right? And said, okay, well, this is going to get us this amount of revenue. I don't believe that that's a fair enough way to look at it. I think we need to look at overhauling the tax code itself so that how every human pays taxes is different. And in that way, we can ensure that we capture the revenue, right? Because it's exploitative. And what happens is in our communities, we're dealing with a wealth gap already. The black median house income is 10 times less than the white median house income in New York City. Right. So it has to be like, I agree with you. Like, we got to stop it. Like, not just stop it at the pass, but create an entire piece in our tax code, which ensures that people like Elon pay his fair share. Right.
But that'll never happen. But that'll never happen because the people in power are all benefiting from what we have in place right
rich
now.
People benefit from the tax code.
And
Trump said that.
Of course, I'm about to say, with his presidency, like, he's amassed billions and billions of dollars since he's been the president. It's a business for him. You know, and when you have crooks on the top making the laws, they gonna benefit their people. You know what I mean? So the middle working class and minorities, we gonna continue to not have because we don't know all the loopholes or we don't have the connections to know all of the tax tricks and all that. So it's systematic, as corny and cliche as that sounds. This is systematically done to keep those who have up there having and us down here struggling. You know what I mean? So when it's demoralizing and sad, because it's like, when will it ever change, or will it ever change?
Right.
Looks like no.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So to be clear, Elon, do he ever be in New York?
I know.
And this is why you got to vote for Marlon
You
Rice.
ever be in New York?
Man of the people.
Do not know where
because
that.
we got to have a conversation. $1 trillion?
Trillionaire.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's crazy.